feel like it's making a glare on my glasses.
All right. We are live some places and we're trying to figure this out. I'm trying to get Instagram to work this time. Hey.
Are we live? Let me share this on my...
Yeah, go ahead and share it. So for those of you that are just joining us while we're getting all the tech specs up here, this is Juice Fresh Talk Live. We've been having trouble the last couple of weeks trying to get this to go to Instagram because like it's got all these extra steps and it's like I have to, for most of the other platforms, we just like click it live here and it goes. But Instagram, you like got to go over there and do things. So I think it's live on Instagram now, which will be really fantastic because that was supposed to be the new edition here for 2024, trying to improve our reach. Because I don't know about you, like, but I feel like I'm on Instagram like a lot more now.
Yes, okay. Definitely.
Yeah. I feel like I am. I mean, I still love to go and like talk a lot of shit on Twitter. But like I feel like my main platform that I originate my posts and my ideas is coming from Instagram.
Yeah. We could have a whole conversation on Twitter. Maybe we should introduce ourselves first. And then
maybe. Maybe.
Go ahead.
Just like people are just tuning in for like the stream of consciousness from two random people. So
that's kind of what we do here. And
anyway. So this is Juice Fresh Talk, and I am your co-host, Dr. Cindy Banyai.
And I'm your other co-host, Sarah Wilson. And we are missing our third again today, unfortunately. Chantel couldn't be with us, but hopefully she'll be returning soon.
Yeah, hopefully. So, because this was really all her idea too. And this was her brainchild coming together and then brought you and I in together. So, we really miss her creative presence when she's not here. And I have not featured it yet, but one of the things that through Big Mouth Media that we've been doing is featuring our Black-led Black Voices podcast. And we happen to have a lot, which is very cool. And I'm very proud of that, to be part of the Big Mouth Media Network, that we're featuring and lifting up so many amazing Black leaders and Black voices, especially here in Southwest Florida, where they're very often overlooked or tokenized or some other kind of marginalization that happens in our region as well. We'll get the juice coming up because we still have, another, week or and change here coming up to the end of Black History Month. And so Juice is going to be one of our final features here. But we have other shows like Proud of You, Sis, which is all about talking about the achievements of folks led by Danny Benson. And we also have Howard Sapp. Now, with Howard Sapp. So he talks a lot about the local politics in Florida legislature. We did a special series over the summer with Dr. Karen Jackson and her doctoral students out of North Carolina A&T, going through their community development activities. So that's a special series that you can connect with as well. So those are just some of the amazing other podcasts that feature and lift up Black voices. So
awesome. Yes. So
do you want to jump in and like do an addendum to, or like a follow-up to our story last week about Christopher Jordan and the work that you're doing with the NAACP?
Sure, we can do that because it was kind of an eventful week following up on the FBI investigation. We did have a meeting with the local FBI, with the field agents here in Fort Myers, and confirmed, because I know there was some confusion. Some of the news stations were getting information from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and which was adding a little bit of confusion. But there is an open investigation. We sat down, myself and President Mawakil sat down with the FBI agents Friday, and they're in the information gathering stage of their investigation. So we basically sat with them and gave them details that they needed, kind of a time of everything that's occurred since December 1st. So that is good news because we feel that this independent federal investigation is so necessary, because we also got word on Friday that FDLE, who Fort Myers PD sent this to for independent investigation, has already closed their investigation and turned it over to the state's attorney's office. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't come back in. If the state's attorney needs any further information, they can come back in and do further investigation based on what the state's attorney directs them to do. However, from their perspective, they have completed their investigation, which is concerning to us because we still have so many witnesses that are like, we never heard from anybody. We've never talked to anybody or told them what happened. And I've even had witnesses, because again, I know I mentioned this last time, this whole incident was being filmed by a neighbor and streamed on Facebook Live. So there are witnesses that saw what went down even on Facebook. So I've had people reach out to me saying, I watched this on Facebook, and given me their perspective of what happened.
And let's just for those of the folks who are not totally up to date on this case, I'm going to give a little framework based on what's going on, just so that, and you can add in the details. So this was what is going on is there was a man named Christopher Jordan who was killed by Fort Myers PD after a domestic disturbance call to his home. He was complying with the police officers. He was alone in his home. They instructed him to come to the window, and then they shot and killed him at that time.
Correct.
And so from here moving forward, there's been questions that the family has raised, witnesses have raised, and NAACP has taken up this as a cause for social justice relation to police shooting. So they've asked for these various investigations from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE. That's the internal, kind of like the internal external check on the police department. And then last week, the NAACP met to clarify and get information on the updated case with the FBI looking into this shooting, right? That's the summary. Okay.
And let me just reiterate two of the pieces to this that I think are the most crucial, because we've been covered by the news a lot. And every time I give the whole story, and that's why I'm like, just giving little updates at this point. But the two crucial pieces to this are from FMPD or FDLE's perspective is that they were under the assumption when they arrived that he was armed, because that was what his sister said in the report. Okay. So when the statement was released the night of the incident by Chief Fields, he said that the officer who shot saw a gun pointing at the window. The news keeps reiterating that point, but the point that is major to this is, and that's missing, is that we have received an anonymous letter from an FMPD officer that said that that was not true, that Chief Fields, even the city manager and city attorney, there was communication between all of them and the officers on site, and that they knew at that point in time that he was unarmed and allowed that statement to be released anyway. Now, the officer that sent that said that there's communications between text messages and email that could verify that. And based on that information, the NAACP has filed public records requests with FMPD and the city of Fort Myers, because both of those things, text and email, on city email, city phones, that is public record.
Right.
So, and under the sunshine laws, they should be releasing that information to us. We have not received any of that. The one to the city was requested back in early December after this happened. And the most recent to FMPD was sent, I want to say 3 weeks ago. So, and those have been ignored. So those are two major pieces to this puzzle, is that if they are not engaged in a cover-up, because that's what it seems like to me. If they are not engaged in a cover-up, why not release those records if there's nothing to find?
Right.
And this is the point that I really want to drive home, because a lot of people, I feel like some of the lacking support that we're getting is because a lot of the people keep hearing on the news that video, the bit of footage that FMPD did agree to release, because we asked for a body cam footage. They only released 2 days after they told us they wouldn't give it to us. 2 days later, they released it to the news, but only the portion of it where the sister is saying that he was armed. So a lot of people are really hanging on to that one piece there.
Sure.
But like I said, if this is all bull, then why not clear it up? Why not let us know? And again, now Chief Fields released another statement saying the statement the night of the incident was based on the information that we had. So are you saying he was unarmed now? Are you saying that without
It
saying?
does sound a little bit like a walk back, doesn't it?
It's a walk back without just coming out and saying he was unarmed. We did not find a weapon on site. So it's just, there's a lot of, in my opinion, based on what we have so far, there's quite a bit of malfeasance here. There is reason for concern and reason for the community to get behind us and say, this is not okay. Even the lack of transparency, like, this is not okay. Mm-hmm. Another point, and I'll repeat this again. If he was armed, he was in that home alone. He was by himself.
Right.
The police, because of numerous occasions that they had been out there before, they knew that he had never been violent before. They knew that he was struggling with mental health issues. And he's in that home alone. And if you think he's in there alone with a weapon, are you not concerned? Would this not be a wellness check to prevent a suicide at that point? Like, this is my problem. And I think that this would have been handled differently if we would have been dealing with a white man. And
absolutely.
And I can say that based on the cases that we've seen in Fort Myers where this has happened before, and they've spent hours upon hours trying to negotiate getting someone out of the home safely, even when they're armed. Even when they're armed. So sorry, that was long-winded, but those are the parts that I really want people to understand. This is not just straightforward.
Right.
We're waiting to see what happened, and he was armed, and they saw a gun, so they shot him. That's not the detail.
Listen, and let's be clear. Even if that was the case, you don't get to just shoot somebody because they have a gun, right? Like, he wasn't threatening the officers. There was no verbal altercation with that. He was in the home. He was complying and doing what the police officer said. Right. And it's what's disappointing for me is the complicity that the local media has in this, is that they are taking those clips where it says, hey, oh, he had a gun. And then everybody's like, oh, okay, well then of course we're going to shoot him. Like, that's not okay.
Right. And that's, when we talk more broadly, even past the scope of Fort Myers, like, the fact that that's our thinking that, well, if he did have a gun, then it's completely justified. That, I think, is a major problem that we have been conditioned to have, that due process doesn't matter, that there should be no attempt to save lives without deadly force. Like, it saddens me that we've gotten to the point where we think, oh, if he had a gun, then it was completely justifiable. It's not. You have a whole, there were so many officers out there, so many police vehicles. They have shields. They have their cars in front of them. He's in his home behind walls. And yes, there's a window there. But here's another point. He had an AC unit, a window AC unit in one of the windows. And I don't quote me on this, but I think it was the window that he ended up being shot through, but I don't know 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure on that, but there was a whole AC window unit that the police took out with no confrontation from him. So you mean to tell me you got to go up there to the home, take out the AC unit so that you could see him better or have better easy, and a sniper setup? Because from what we're told, it was a sniper that took him. Like, this whole situation just was not, it's not, to me, if you're dealing with somebody in a mental health crisis, which at that point, when he's in there alone, posing no threat to anybody else, that's what, the situation had changed. The status of that changed at that point. So then your protocol needs to change.
I want to push on this a little bit more too, because I agree with you that this concept that, like, oh yeah, the police, they can just shoot anybody all the time, and that's totally acceptable. Because we actually had an incident last week dealing with the Lee County Sheriff. And this was there was a hostage situation at a bank, at my bank, by the way. let me bring this a little home here.
That you
at
almost
the bank, yeah, that I was going to go to, that I had like banking things that I was going to go to that day. And it was just by chance that I took my daughter to the dentist, and there was a branch of my bank next to her dentist. So I went there instead. If that had not been the case, my plan was to go to that bank. So I would have been right there at about the time that the hostage situation take up, which was one of those like near misses for me that really mess with my mind, but I digress. So same thing with the plane crash last week. That's another situation altogether too.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a heck of a week. So, back to the hostage situation. So the man had entered the bank with a knife. Okay, not a gun, a knife. Okay, apparently took all these people hostage. He physically had control of 2, from what I understand. Police rushed in after a series of, trying to, whatever, negotiate or figure out the situation. When police came in, the majority of the people that were still remaining in the building ran out the door when the police came in. He still had 2 people, one of whom he was trying to get in a headlock. And again, a sniper killed him at that time. Mm-hmm. So even in that circumstance, and yes, there were hostages, and yes, there was a violent situation. So it is different. Mm-hmm. But the family of the man who was killed called into question, saying, look, they know that this man had mental health issues. He did have a long criminal past. They knew he was unstable. But was it still appropriate to enact a sniper to kill him at that moment? Like, were there other options? Was there, did they really fully try the gambit of negotiation and trying to de-escalate and things like that? And I'm not sure that there was. Like, I don't know the whole situation with it, but it really does call into question for me this trigger happiness that we see. And then the fact that everybody in the community is like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, rah, rah, that it's okay for the police by sniper, like we live in a friggin' war zone, okay, to be killing people in our community. I have higher expectations.
I mean, so do I. I agree. I think what the details that I do know about the bank hostage situation, from my understanding, he did get the hostage around the neck and had the knife to her throat. That's my understanding of the situation. So, and if more details come out and that isn't true, which, that can happen, just like in Christopher Jordan, then I would question that a little bit deeper. But still, you're right. And I think even taking it further than that, from my understanding, the police were at his house that morning in Port Charlotte because of some drug issues or something else. I don't know. I caught a tidbit of the news where his neighbor was saying that the police had been out there, and his neighbor was really upset because he's like, he was on drugs. He had mental health issues. I saw him this morning and it was like he wasn't even there. So it's the deeper issue that goes beyond any of this is mental health in this country, because so many people, and even like, we've made a point of saying Christopher Jordan was not perfect. He was a petty theft. He had drug charges, but why are we not looking at this bigger issue in the United States when it comes to drugs, and how so many people, because we have no systems in place for mental health, or not good ones for mental health. So people are self-medicating, and then we're turning people that have actual health issues into criminals.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
because the police are the first line in mental health services in state of Florida in particular. They are the first line. And so, of course, it's natural that if they're the first line, no matter what happens, by the way, like in order, like, to get even somebody Baker acted, you have to call the police, right? And so the police are the ones who respond to that. So you have a high propensity of that turning into a criminal situation, no matter what the scenario is. And it's not a good system, and it does turn people into criminals when there could be another way. And I think that's what I'm really pushing on here, is like, were there different options? And like, I go back to also last night. Did you go to the Edison Light Parade?
I did not.
I did. I love going with my kids. It's always super fun. Like, my daughter wants to go be in a marching band, and they got all the high school marching bands. So it's always really fun for us. Okay. The unfortunate side of it is that it's also like this really grotesque glorification of the police state. Actually, less so this year. Last year was like every single thing that Sheriff Carmine Marcino has spent public dollars on was in the parade. Less of that this year, which was very cool. A very cool part of it. But then again, Sheriff Carmine Marcino was like walking by, glad handing everybody with like a friggin' entourage of people, like 8 bodyguards to protect him, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. But anyway, so and then he walked past me and he looked at me like he'd heard my podcast about him, which you should definitely go back and listen to if you want to know about what kind of fellow we actually have running the sheriff department here. and his predatory actions towards women. So that being said, that wasn't even the most horrifying part. The most horrifying part was, as the police, like the parade is beginning, there's a sheriff helicopter circling above us, playing Bad Boys, the Cops theme, like blaring it out of the helicopter over the parade. And I'm just like, I'm looking up like, Lord, is that really happening right now? Like, are we really hearing this like blared from a helicopter? Yes, I know, for entertainment exists. It's like entertainment. And it is like this, it is a grotesque glorification of the police state. Like, I hate to put it like that, because it was otherwise supposed to be like this fun thing and lights and whatever. But like, I get very concerned about that, the way that we've normalized this, like normalizing having military equipment on our police force, normalizing having helicopters circling about, like looking for folks, right? Like that it's this television ready, snapshot ready scenario where the good guys are winning at all costs, right? Like, and that's what it sets up. And that's why we have the news saying, oh, well, he had a gun, of course it's fine, right? Like, or, oh, cool, they had the sniper, and they had to bring out all these, the cool equipment and stuff. It's not like it goes beyond like protect and serve. It's showcasing and really, frankly, desensitizing us to police violence and any potential escalation from there.
Right. Well, and desensitizing us from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that that's sometimes how we condemn people, especially when it comes to, most of the people in our jails are there because of drugs. I mean, if you take drugs out of the equation, there's not that much crime. And even a lot of the like crime secondary to drugs, like stealing and theft and things like that, most of that is still drug related, because you have people that become addicted that have to steal to get their fix. And that is the reality of drug addiction.
Heard tricks too, by the way. The solicitation, prostitution is a big component of that.
And all of this can be traced back to mental health. So to me, it's like we are taking these people that are sick, that are struggling, that need help from our system, and we are condemning them and criminalizing them. And that's a huge problem for me. And I would like to change the way we look at that and change the way we value the lives of others, because that's really what it comes down to, is who's more valuable.
Right.
Sorry, my dog felt strongly about that.
Yeah, your dog feels strongly about that too. But I agree too. That's the policy difference too, by the way. And I talked a lot about this on the campaign trail as well, is when we have people who are elected and they're not seeing the humanity in others, and they're making policy based on who is valued and who is worthy, we have a problem, right? Because everyone is worthy of human dignity. Everyone is worthy of human dignity. And that doesn't matter if you are a rape victim or a drug user or somebody who's homeless. You are all worthy of human dignity at all points in your life too, by the way. Like, that's why we fight against, cruelty in the prisons. And that's why we fight for fair housing. And that's why we fight against police brutality, is because it really is not very far that any one individual or group of people, for instance, can be dehumanized, and all of this system can be used against them. And once we've justified it, right? Once we justified and start talking about how this group is not worthy of human dignity, that can be applied to anybody. And that's really what it all rolls down to.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of assumptions too. Like when I hear people saying, well, those of us that are working hard, we shouldn't have to be paying for people to sit on their butts and do nothing. And they should have health care. They should have this. They should have that. And people really make these huge assumptions that it's just because some people want to sit around and do nothing, and that's how they end up in these situations. And it's like, no, it's actually really easy to get into a cycle where you just homelessness, for instance, you lose your job, you end up houseless, especially with the cost of living here and the cost of rentals. And then you consider what you have to do to qualify to rent here, right? And so you end up houseless because you don't have family, you don't have somebody that's going to put you up, and you end up houseless and jobless. And then you're trying to get a job, but you don't have a house. So what address do you use for your job applications? How do you get a driver's license without an address? Like all of this stuff is dependent on the other, and people don't understand. Like that's why it's so difficult for houseless people to get jobs, because they don't have an address, and you have to have an address in most cases. So it's just, it becomes this cycle. And then once you're down, even once you do get a job, then you got to pay all of these costs to get into a place. And then on top of that, will you qualify, especially if you came on hard times and had to get evicted? Like, so it's just, and
or have a felony too, or, you know, criminal history too. That's another component of it.
We want to talk about people that they go to jail and then they just don't want to do right. No, that's not the case. You get out of jail, you can't find a place to live because you're a felon. You can't find a place to work because you're a felon. What do? Do you just...
You go back and you sell drugs?
Because you do the criminal behavior that you can make money doing. Like we set people up for this. And even like, I know a lot of people that don't understand, like misdemeanors can be just as bad. Like, if you get a felony, then you get your rights stripped away, which there's nothing worse than that. But misdemeanors will catch people in the system for their whole lives. It may as well be a felony because it's a fine-based system. So it's criminalizing poverty in that case, because if you are wealthy and you can pay for even a DUI, if you're wealthy, you can get out of a DUI really easy. If you're not, those fines and the probation, and it can take years upon years upon years, and then you can't drive, so you can't work, and it's just this self-perpetuating cycle. Sorry, I could go off on a tangent all day long about
no. That's part of it. Like, and that's why it is that, you know, especially when we talk about social justice, it's a comprehensive thing, right? It's not only just like kumbaya, let's be good to each other, right? It's like no. There are systems, there are things. So eliminating dehumanization is, you know, and the language around it is one component of it, right? And then because that can also lead into the propensity for police violence and for over policing and things like that, right? Because you say these people are not worthy, these are the bad people, so we're gonna over police them and things like that, and then you can get into this criminal cycle. But it's actually really easy too, even if you just have a bad week. It's sometimes as little as $500 can put some people off track. We are less than half of Americans could survive in their current state with $1,000 emergency fee that they would have to pay. And that could be a hospital bill or a car crash or something like that. And it is, you know, more than half the people that are homeless or experiencing homelessness are often working as well. They have like one working person in that family unit. There are families that are homeless. They are living here among us as well. They're living in the forest. They've been displaced numerous times because they're also over policed in those situations as well. And actually, rolling it back to politics, our very own Senator Jonathan Martin wants to add a little bit extra layer to that to make it criminal.
I'm so fed up with him. I am so fed up with this man.
Oh my God. He really took a big turn too. But this one's not even getting as much attention as the other really horrible bills that he's put forth that are part of the terrible top 10 Republican agenda this year. But this one is criminalizing public sleeping.
Yeah.
So it not only, because a lot of times, like if somebody is sleeping and experiencing homelessness and they're maybe sleeping in a park or other place, it's usually like a misdemeanor trespass violation of some kind, right? His bill will criminalize the act in its entirety. So they can be trespassed and have that other criminal activity. I don't know what level it goes up to, a felony or something along those lines, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was pretty quick. So I mean, we're talking about adding into that system rather than fixing it. And we unfortunately do. He's not the only one that's in the state. I mean, I've long been a critic of our county commissioners on this, on treating people differently and not applying the standard of human dignity to everybody, just with the way that they treat people who are experiencing homelessness in this area.
Right. Yeah, there's going to, in fact, there was a story in the news. Maybe we should talk about that because that got me completely riled up yesterday. There's a man.
Which one? Which thing got your goat today or yesterday?
I mean, there's about a good amount of things per day that when there's a legislative session going on in the state of Florida, I'm bound to get riled up every day.
Every day is like, oh, wow. Is it
Right.
1950? Because, yeah.
Well, this was actually in our local news. There is a man who is living out of, the pop-up trailers that like they fold in and then they can pop out. Does that make sense? They have like three sides to them. A man and his three daughters have been living in this, I want to say for 3 years, the article said, because his mother, he's a single father. He was living with his mother, with his daughters. And when she died in 2020, he was getting some assistance and some housing assistance. And I don't know exactly of what kind, but it ran out. And he ended up, they moved into this little pop-up trailer, and they've been staying in that. I think it said for 2 to 3 years, and now he has a job, right? So he was looking for a job. He's applied for every form of housing assistance that you could. And then he recently got a denial from the housing authority because he now makes too much money. So he makes $21 an hour. And this is where I think, policies have to change as the economy changes and as things change in communities, because $21 an hour, while that used to sound like a lot of money and that you could easily live off of that, for a single father of 3 girls, he can't afford to live anywhere here. And he makes too much money to get help. So he falls in that space of, you're screwed, you're on your own. Like, and I was looking up like what they make these determinations on, like how much is too much. And here for I want to say for the housing authority, it's got to be, you got to make less than 50% of the median income, which the median income is like, I can't even remember what it was for here,
like 53,000, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. So he makes less than that, but I'm like, well, when do we address that? Because that's all good and well, but people in the median income can't afford to live here. People in the median income cannot afford to rent a home here. It's crazy.
Well, we are in a place where more than half of the renters are experiencing extreme burden when it comes to costs. So that means over 50% of their income is going towards housing costs. Okay. Now, just by comparison, 25% of your income being used towards housing is considered sustainable. Okay, 30% is what Habitat uses, but frankly, they've been stretching it for a very long time.
That's what I'm saying.
25% is really what all the data shows us is like, that's reasonable. But most people prior to that, if they were really housed, it's much less. So, but yeah, so we're over 50% of the income is on that. And it's not, that's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing. And that's what leads to homelessness and people being displaced in a whole bunch of different ways. One thing I did want to add to that, like the solution really is to like stop electing fiscal conservative assholes. That's the that's the thing, because it's all this, they penny pinch in these ways, right? Like, ooh, we're fiscally responsible. We're going to make sure that, and then if you get the fiscal conservative nonsense on top of this differentiation of human dignity, right? So these people are worthy of services, but these people aren't, right? That's where you get these gaps and horrible things in policy. Another thing that I've been talking a lot about recently is changes that the Lee County housing, or what is it, veterans and social service, whatever their department is, they've added extra restrictions on the HUD dollars, right? And the Lee HEAP, which is the energy subsidies that they would give to folks, right? Basically, the federal government says, here are the standards, right? That you have to have this amount of income and housing, and then they will give you a subsidy to help you pay your electricity and things like that. They've changed the requirements to that. So now they are only servicing people who are disabled or veterans. So they've added in these additional restrictions, and now they've eliminated it. And really, do you know what it comes down to? They don't want to hire more staff, because actually more people than ever are qualified to get that federal subsidy. But they have these elaborate requirements. It's like, you can apply. It opens on Tuesday at 8 a.m. We take the first 20 applications, and then you can expect us to, figure out your case within 3 days. And that's it. It's like they only take 20 applications a day. And it's really ridiculous, because like this all could be solved. Like they could process as many applications as they needed, or as there were, if they had the appropriate systems and the appropriate staffing, but they don't want to do that. They would rather cut the funding to people that need it. Right. Gross.
Yeah, it's all real frustrating. It's all real frustrating, but we got to keep doing what we do and getting out there and being a voice. And because most people, like, we're all, because of the way things are, especially right now in the state of Florida, we are all just trying to get through. You know what I mean? This is even for my wife and I, who normally do well financially. Like, we normally do just fine. You know what I mean? Since Ian, we've even, like, it's been a struggle. So I think when everybody's just really trying to make it, it's hard to really know what's going on. It's hard for people to take the time outside of just trying to make it through. And I think that's what, happened here in the state of Florida, is that's why a lot falls to the wayside, because when everybody's just trying to survive, nobody really has time to even look into what they're doing. And they know that, like,
yeah, they do, because they got all the money. The only reason I know is I applied for these programs, because I am also in that state where things got really bad for me. I've been, virtually blacklisted as a Democrat in this area who stood up. Very difficult to get back in, especially in the nonprofit realm, where they're really at the whim of their donors, many of whom are Republican. So I've really had a tough time. Oh, by the way, I'm an adjunct and I make poverty wages with a PhD. So it's friggin' ridiculous all around, but I've been on food stamps, right? I had to apply for all of that. I got the Lee heat before. So I got that energy subsidy. And then when I went to reapply for it, I realized that they changed the rules. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is terrible. By the way, there's another thing that I haven't talked about before, but I want everybody to know. I want everybody to know how disgusting things are in the state of Florida. If you have to apply, if you're like a mom with kids, right, and you want to apply to get state assistance for your kids, you have to go through this process that links up with DCF and tries to get the fathers, typically to pay child support. Okay. Which, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. But the paperwork that they make you do for that is so incredibly invasive. Like they ask you like they ask you the date that you had sex and whom you had sex with, so that they can narrow down who they think the father is. Now, that's particularly insulting because, like, in the state of Florida, when you're married, whether or not the children are biologically your husband's children, if you have a child in that marriage, that's the father, right? Like, that's the law in the state of Florida. And I was married at the time, and so their dad was legally their dad, like, no matter what. But the paperwork was asking me these incredibly intimate questions, treating me like I'm just a whore who doesn't know who the father of my children is, just to get friggin' food stamps to help feed my kids. Yes.
Well, I mean, that's the stereotype right there. You hit the nail on the head. Just women out here getting pregnant and soaking up welfare and food stamps. Like that's that's what people think it is. And I'm like, your common everyday families are on food stamps right now.
Veterans, active service members are also on food stamps.
Yeah, the disabled. Like, I mean, wild.
It was so invasive to me and like embarrassing and disgusting.
Yeah,
I'm like, what? And it's like I didn't even understand, because it's like you're just like, okay, I gotta fill out this paper, and then I'm like, why are they asking these? Like, what is this? Like, what is this connected to? Right. And I didn't even like realize it, like what it was. I was like, and I'm just like, ew, like, this is what they're asking folks. So Just a little tidbit, and I only knew that because I went through it, but it's intended to be humiliating too.
Right.
Like that's part of the process and part of why it's gross.
Right.
Is it's intended to shame people who are reaching out for services. And that's, that wasn't the circumstance with me. Like, we're talking about health issues and divorce and financial problems and a hurricane. Like those are things that are not like in my control, right? And I just need some help. And why do you have to, slut shame me through paperwork?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, gross. And that's why we need to clear everybody out.
Clear them all out.
Because it's disgusting.
Yeah. But some good news.
Okay, yeah, let's end on some good news here, okay? Because I'm feeling like and it's raining in Florida. It never rains here.
No, I know I had to go into the shop today and go to work for a little while, and I was going to record from there, which would have been good because like I have a better background. My dogs aren't like crying at me to pick them up. But since I can't be outside and have my pond view behind me, which I really think that that's going to be my new thing. Good luck. It's not raining, but yeah, then we ended up leaving the shop a little bit earlier, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to just record in here, I guess, with it raining and see who's joining.
All right, tell us the good news.
Good news. Okay, Senator Martin, you remember the bill we talked about, Senate Bill 1122 on the monuments, historical monuments.
Yeah. Yeah, that one.
Okay, so it's looking like Parker. He feels strongly about that too. That's dead. It's not moving.
Oh, really?
Which it had been moving really quickly. But then there was a whole ordeal that happened. And I don't know all the details. I wish I did right now. My friend was actually telling me about it while I was driving this week. And I was busy and wanted to go back and look it up. But apparently there was some heated debate on that bill. And somebody got called out and said that basically this is a white supremacist bill. And I don't know who. I need to confirm who this was, but somebody said, yeah, that is the point we're trying to make. And so there was this whole ordeal, and then they were basically like, we can't let this bill go anywhere. Like this, it's too much.
It's too obvious.
Yeah.
We said the quiet part out loud.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, because somebody did. They were like, yeah, that is what it is.
I think, okay, like that explains it. I'm going to do some digging with folks that I know up in Tallahassee too, because Florida politics puts out there like this thing where it's like the ups and downs and stuff. And there was one that was like very cryptic about Jonathan Martin, and it was like a down arrow kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm looking through all the, the posts from the articles. I'm like, what is this about? But I bet you it's about that. So now I want to know.
But it's funny because my best friend who told me she watched it, she was watching it on the Florida channel. And she said, it was kind of like, it's almost obvious that Jonathan Martin was like hoaxed into writing this bill, right? Because he's from Iowa or Idaho. Where did you say? Iowa. And she's like, he looked like a deer caught in the headlights because he was just like, like, I don't know about all this stuff. Like, somebody told me this would be good for history, and I'm like, I don't buy that. But
he is a goober. Like, I will say though that like what has become clear is that they are trying to catapult Jonathan Martin into leadership because he has co-authored like co-sponsored 4 of the bills that are on the top 10 Republican legislative agenda for this session. Mm-hmm. And so that usually means it's like they're trying to position him to take over leadership, which would make sense, right? Even though really, let's keep in mind, he walked into his seat in 2022. He had no opponent. It was a last minute rope-a-dope. It was Senator Ray Rodriguez who got called up to become the board of trustees, the board of governors, the chair of board of governors by Ron DeSantis, because he let Ron DeSantis's congressional map go through during the special session. So they didn't put any additional thing in it. They called all the legislators back to Tallahassee to figure out the bill because Ron DeSantis vetoed the congressional maps. Ron DeSantis wrote his own maps, and then Ron DeSantis' map gets approved. Like it was so like you could tell that there was backroom deals, and that was actually the backroom deal. The backroom deal was that Ray Rodriguez got a really, really big, fat, and powerful position controlling the universities in the state of Florida. And they shot in Jonathan Martin, who had been the Lee County GOP chair, at the very last minute, literally like, last hour of the last day of qualifying, got him in there. And then he walked in, and then he just collected a bunch of money from the insurance company and had no appointment, no opponent. So yeah, that's what we're dealing with. He's like, and that's why you should vote for Chris Brea. That's why we have to fight these people everywhere, because they're getting come in. He's never been elected, but yet there he is doing dumb things and putting like bold-faced white supremacist bills forward. And then being like, oh, I had no idea.
Yeah. Whatever.
I held that all in, by the way. I saw him at the parade, and I was like,
oh, did you?
Every ounce of me wanted to heckle him, but I'm like, okay, there's children, family friendly.
Yeah.
So I held it together, and that his staff was giving out candy.
So you're like, kids get
your candy. Like, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
Right. Well,
all right. So the stupid Confederate statue bill is over. Awesome.
Yep, yeah. So that's done.
Yay!
I wish we could celebrate about something more substantive, because there's some really dangerous bills that are going through.
Oh, yeah. Let's review those next time, because they'll be further along, and we'll know how many of those dangerous bills are going to be enacted.
Right. Did you hear, though, that Ron DeSantis is backtracking on the book bans? Like, he is saying that, what did I do here? Big old problems.
Because it turns out that's stupid and dumb, and nobody likes it.
Yeah.
And you look really shitty and stupid when you say things, and they're like, why do you ban To Kill a Mockingbird? And he's like, so
the fact is he probably doesn't even know what half of these books are about, and so he doesn't know how to answer these questions.
He just puts them under the podium when he steps up to it. I'm sorry. I've been holding it in for the whole parade.
No, I'll heckle Ron DeSantis all day long, because I cannot stand that man. He's vile.
I really hope that they don't name the Matt Lachey bridge that was repaired Ron DeSantis Bridge.
What?
There was that's something the county commissioner is doing.
Yeah, I'll be at that meeting.
And so for anybody that doesn't remember, that was actually the infamous white boots appearance where he showed up with the brand new shrimping boots that were white, that all the memes were from. That was him coming to Matt Lachey to celebrate that they fixed the bridge after Hurricane Ian.
Those white boots in combination with the vest, I cannot with him. But here's the thing, like, what I don't understand is how are you not so embarrassed at this point? Like, his run for president was just so embarrassing. The fact that he thought he could go up against Big Daddy Trump is just funny to me. And then to like have to backtrack on the book ban, it just feels like he's constantly looking like a fool. And I don't know, those white boots, that's another time. The faces that he makes. And he's
the
not.
The sound of his voice is what gets me. I'm like, that's what you sound like when you open your pie hole? Like, that's horrible. I like the videos better where it's all auto-tuned over.
Yeah. I don't know. And I'll never make fun of somebody's appearance, right? And it's not even like he's an unattractive guy. In fact, when he was younger, he was a very attractive man, but it's the faces that he makes. I'm like, if that is any correlation between what's happening in your brain and how it's manifesting these looks on your face, I'm concerned as to what's actually going on in your brain, because it looks
like a monkey with cymbals.
It looks like Nothingsville. Like no one's there. Like knock, no one's home.
Yeah.
But
and what it is like he had a very cultivated image that he had on the campaign trail, and he had a lot of advice. His wife was a news, reporter person, and so he was able to do that. And like, as long as he didn't get all these questions, he could say his pitch and it was fine. But when it was a little less scripted, he really went off the rails is what it comes down to. So,
and it's a shame because if he would have just played his cards right, and I say this all the time, he could have still been like Florida's superhero, like for the Republicans, of course, like just the superhero in Florida, and then still been up under Daddy Trump's wing.
Good gracious, yeah.
Let Trump run for this 2024, and then he could have ran in 2028. And I'm like, why did you not do that? Like, what made you so arrogant to where you're like, no, it needs to be now, and I'm going against Daddy Trump, and I'm losing half of my supporters or more.
I really think that all of the folks who ran in the presidential primary for the Republicans, with the exception of like Chris Christie, who was there to like criticize Trump, right? I think that they all thought that with all the indictments and all the stuff coming down, that something would have happened, like that he would have like, oh, I can't run, it's too much. So they wanted to be there, right? That was the point. But I just think that they miscalculated and just like how much Trump was not going to let any of that stop him. I think that's my thing.
If anybody thinks Trump's going to let anything stop him, like,
I mean, apparently, some people were like, well, maybe 91 indictments will stop him.
I don't see it. He is way too arrogant. And then I'm like, well, Ron DeSantis is like Donald Trump Jr. because he's just as arrogant to think that he could run against him. Like, it's wild out here in these political streets.
Wild. It is. So we'll have to recap all of that in the legislative session coming up next time. Yeah. Let's go ahead and call it a day. I'm going to go and enjoy the rest of this rainy afternoon with like a book and a blanket. Maybe
I'm going to watch. I got to watch a documentary for class. So today seems like the perfect day to do that. So
good.
I'm going to kick that off.
Get your homework done. Because we need you out there the rest of the week. We need all of you, actually. Everybody who's watching us, like, you're fighting social justice. You're working on democracy. Like, we need you. So, like, don't be afraid on a rainy day to take a little bit of you time, all right? Support each other, love each other. We always do that. Like, especially with Chantel has always ended us on that. Like, we love each other, support each other, take care of your mental health, take care of your friends, take care of your family. Because in these political times with all these shenanigans and things that are going on, we need you. So take that time and rest, and we'll see you next time.
Right. And if you're looking for anything to do this week, there is a city council meeting on Monday at 4:30. Come down to the city council meeting. And also the NAACP is going to be hosting a candidate and community meet and greet. This is a very casual. Everybody's asking me, will there be tables? There will be tables and you can bring material, but we're not doing banners and all that. This is truly a networking event where you can sit down and chat with your candidates. Cool. So please come out. It's February 29th, Thursday from 6 to 8 at Quality of Life Center on MLK. So please come out and meet your candidates. And this is welcome. All candidates are welcome. No party affiliation preference here. And also for any seat, it doesn't matter as long as you plan to represent some part of Lee County. Okay.
Well, good. Well, I'll be looking forward to all the Republicans showing up to the NAACP event. That'll be fun. All right. I plan on being there. And thank you, Sarah.
I got to keep that nonpartisan.
Yes, but I'm not. She's got a role. I don't. That's the best part about being me at the moment. I get to say whatever I want. Like all that stuff can just come right out, and isn't it glorious? So, and that's why we have these podcasts and all the shows that we have here on Big Mouth Media, so that we give a platform to voices that have been otherwise marginalized, especially here in Southwest Florida and across the state of Florida. So if you enjoyed this show, we would love to have your support. Get a subscription. You can get this episode, full videos delivered right to your inbox. It's $4.99 a month. If you want to get all the shows, $19.99 a month. You can get annual subscriptions. That really helps us because that will help us pay our bills here, because we are just independent folks here getting together, trying to bring you the information to break down what's happening in city council, what's happening in the social justice realm, what's happening in Tallahassee. And we're telling you the things that the other folks won't tell you. We're giving you that extra level of analysis, and so that you actually know what's going on, because I'll tell you what, it's tough out there. It is tough to know, and the things that wait for you after these bills that are enacted, right? So we wouldn't even known about that white supremacy thing. They would have just kept lying and lying and lying until they said the quiet part out loud. And that's exactly what we cover here on The Juice, Fresh Talk, and other shows like that. So go ahead and check out our website, bigmouthmediafl.com. And thanks so much. I have been your co-host, Dr. Cindy Banyai.
And Sarah Wilson.
And love to our friend Chantel Rhodes, and we'll see her at a future episode. Mwah, my friend. We'll see you very soon, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.